DCX. How are you today?
K-Rock.
Good to see you.
I'm well.
Thank you for coming on the show.
You're welcome.
You know, when this show started, I said to myself, DCX will one day be a guest. And here you are.
That day has arrived.
So this show was put together with someone like you in mind.
Well,
because you're so fascinating and interesting
idea
to talk to.
Thanks.
And today we're going to let the whole world know how wonderful DCX is.
Thank you. Thanks, K-Rock.
So
Thanks for having me on.
What are your thoughts of the K-Rock having his own jacked up podcast?
I think it is an absolutely natural marriage of your personality, your business savvy, and your rock and roll lifestyle, your embodiment of all that is a performer and an entertainer. This is the perfect platform for you to bring to the world all that you bring to your creativity and all of your talent. And
you know what's so funny?
Showing off your great friends.
I've always been a show off. That's a great word. I've always been a show off. Even when I was little in school, I was always the class clown, right? I was always the guy that had to get up and either make fun of the teacher or to like, you know, kind of rally the class. Like, come on, let's all walk out of here, man. The teacher's late. The teacher's late. Let's go. Let's go to recess.
We're out of here. Bitch can't have 5 extra minutes. Let's go.
Yeah. And so I think you're cut from the same mold in the sense that you love attention and you're very good in the spotlight. Like you thrive in the spotlight.
Well, thanks. Some days more than others. But yeah, I do believe that you and I would have very, very much been a teacher's greatest nightmare had we ever been in a class together.
If we had joined our forces
in
elementary school?
Yeah, we probably would have been homeschooled. And our parents wouldn't have done that either. Yeah, I think that we both probably brought home a lot of report cards that says talks too much in class.
I did.
Distracting of other students.
It was funny because I was a smart kid and I did well when I applied myself, but I would get Fs when it came to like, you know,
stuff
attention
you didn't like.
And, you know, being a nice neighbor to my people sitting around me in homeroom, you know.
Agree. Yeah. No, I definitely was a bit of a distraction.
Well, we're going to talk about your childhood and what made you fantastic. But before we do that, I want to let everybody know how we first met. So I'm going to start telling the story, then you can correct me and you can add to it.
As I often do.
Right. So before Jacked Up was born, even before, you know, Canopy Road or any of those other projects I had, right? Then I have something on the rocks or some, I had these little projects.
I was on the rocks.
Right.
But yeah,
so I was playing down in Northport and literally in a garage band.
A garage.
I mean, it was a giant garage.
It was.
That had been carpeted and insulated, had air conditioning.
Yeah.
There was a drum riser, and the guy like had a really nice little home studio.
Yeah, he did.
For live performance. So I got recruited there to play, and I was playing bass. Oh, and this guy was the drummer. He was the owner, and there was a guitar player. And that's when I met Mayhem there. So I met Mayhem there.
Right.
And
you already met Larry.
Well, I met Larry, but Larry wasn't involved in this project because you got to remember, Larry was off every summer.
Are you sure? Oh.
So even though I knew Larry.
Okay, you're right. Larry was not.
He wasn't around.
He was
so
not there at
this
first.
was my thing, right? So what happened was I answered, the drummer said, hey, man, our singer didn't work out. We had a female singer. You got to find somebody. So I went to the classifieds. Was it Band Mix or Craigslist?
It might have been Craigslist.
Went to Craigslist.
How embarrassing is that?
And I said to the drummer, who was, again, it was his garage, hey, I found somebody. I'm going to call her and I'm going to invite her to come in. So I reached out to you, I think through email maybe first.
Yeah.
And then you sent me links to like your Denver project. Right. And you were telling me how you're a fitness consultant and you're a singer. You're currently in a duo and all this kind of stuff. So I'm like, okay, cool. So we made arrangements for you to come for a tryout.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of those houses in Northport that had a long road and then a long windy driveway.
Yes.
And I think you were texting me, you were getting lost. And I
was a little concerned. Where am I actually going to spend my final minutes on Earth? Because I feel like I'm going to be murdered.
There's like no streetlights out
here, right?
So you finally show up. So I come out to greet you. And you come out of your car and you're wearing nothing but red socks. Head to toe, you were red socks. And I think you had a cocktail in your hand as well.
Most likely.
Yeah. So what was I wearing?
You were wearing a New York shirt.
Yeah. And like the first thing you said to me before you even said hello was like, I don't know if this is going to work out.
It's exactly what I said.
Something. You're like, oh my God. You're like, oh no.
I looked at your shirt and you looked at my shirt and I go, I don't think
And
this is gonna work
the
out.
difference between you and I is that I didn't even realize I was wearing it.
Oh
Like,
my
I just
God.
stopped to throw it on because it was clean. But like you Red Sox fans, you know, you're so anti-Yankee. You're like, whoa. And then I was like, oh my God. I'm like, probably shouldn't have wore this shirt.
Yes, you are correct. You should not have ever again either.
Right. So you come out. So and you were cool, man. You were walking in a room full of strangers, right? You know, I didn't know where you were, but you were totally cool about it.
Which I believed was to my actual death. But
Yeah.
yes.
And then you walked into the studio room, and I quickly introduced everybody. I mean, I didn't even know who you were, but you got on the microphone and we played a couple songs, and you just belted out these songs, and we all looked at each other like, "Oh my God, this woman's awesome." You just
Yeah,
killed it.
it was so funny. I'll never forget the look on your faces when it wasn't the first song, but it wasn't that long into the audition when they said, "Let's do Man in a Box." And I was like, "All right, that's a pretty good song." And when it gets to the, "Feed my eyes," and I like, screamed it out, and all you guys just like your jaws just all like dropped. And I think one of them said, "Yep, we're good here." Yeah, like she's in or whatever, but then
So I think there was 1 or 2 rehearsals there, and then but I didn't tell you this, but like I was on my way out of that project.
well, yes.
Because I just couldn't take it anymore, and but then I found you, and I'm like, well, I said to myself, I'm gonna bring her with
I'm
me
gonna steal her.
because
And Mayhem.
I knew that I had a project in the works in Sarasota, and you were living, I think, out,
Anna Maria Island.
Bradenton, so
I was on the
it would have been
island.
an easier commute for you anyway.
Yeah.
Because prior to that, you were commuting down to Punta Gorda doing a duo, right?
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
that must have been a
It
crazy
was
hike.
awful. Well, when I first moved to Florida, I lived in Cape Coral. My parents have a place down there, and I was staying at their house. And so Punta Gorda made sense for a while, and then until it didn't. And then I was living, more toward I-75, so it still wasn't terrible. But once I moved out to Anna Maria Island and was having to commute down to not only Punta Gorda, but down to Fort Myers and Cape Coral. I mean, we were playing all down around Charlotte County, and there were some long drives, and so I was like really over that and just wanted to start gigging, in Bradenton and Sarasota area. Plus, a little younger crowd and obviously much shorter commute. So it definitely was. I was definitely excited to move further north. But back to our garage band experience.
So when I said to you, I'm leaving, and you said, I'm coming with you. So we formed a friendship at that
well,
point.
yeah. In spite of our rivalry sports teams, we hit it off pretty quickly.
Oh,
And so
yeah.
we actually started riding because again with the driving, we started riding to the rehearsal. We rode to a few of the rehearsals together. We carpooled, and there was definitely some personality conflicts in the band between some of the other people. And so you and we left. There was a particular rehearsal or that went terribly bad with some fighting.
last one.
They actually were fighting.
Yeah, the very last one.
And we got in the car and we got Mayhem on the conference call, and you said you got in the car and you said, I literally almost about 30 minutes into that experience, I lost my will to live.
I had a living, waking, out of body experience.
I
You know what I'm
lost
saying?
my will to live. I was like, well, I think maybe we shouldn't do this anymore. So we get Mayhem on the conference on the phone, and he he picked up and he was like, I'm out. We were all like done. And we never. I don't think. Well, you had to go back because you had equipment there.
Well,
but
that was a weird story.
none
there.
of the rest of us ever
right.
went back there.
And you
again.
never ever saw those guys out in public.
God, never.
Well, here's the thing. So I had to go back by myself to get my amp because I had
Scary.
one of those giant Ampeg amps,
Yeah.
like heavy duty,
Mhm.
and it was like a hassle, right? And I don't think I was driving a Honda at the time, so I had to
You
go back.
were.
And the guy who owned the studio, he wasn't like happy about this, man.
No,
he was
he was
upset that I
not.
was quitting. He's like, "Come on, man.
And taking me.
He goes, "This is supposed to be for fun, man. This is supposed to be for fun." And I'm like, "Look, I have every intention of gigging out because I wanted to get a band together, and I wanted to gig out, and I wanted to make money, and I wanted to play."
Right.
And I knew, I mean, this is before Jacked Up. I knew that's what I wanted to do, and I knew you were definitely going to be with me on that project. So, he was like crying when I was like taking the stuff out of his house, and I was jammed it into my Honda and drove away.
They were some interesting characters for sure. But anyway, the point of the moral of the story is that having gone through that somewhat painful experience, led us to where we all are today.
Well, we became very good friends from that
Yep.
point on, and
And how did I get my nickname? Because everybody always asks me.
Your nickname DCX?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, obviously you know this better than I do, but I think that weren't you in a band called when you were in Colorado, you sent me a clip of a band called DC Express.
Correct. That is correct.
And DC Dana Cohen, your last name at the time was Cohen, so it was DC Express,
Right.
and then it was DCX. But it was funny
People
too.
ask me all the time, where'd DCX come from? I'm like,
but
K-Rock.
You know what? You and I always call each other by our nicknames. Like we never, like you always call me K-Rock, and I always call you DCX. And sometimes people will say to me, "Who the hell's DCX?" I'm like, "Oh, it's Dana Cohen. I'm Dana Bienvenue."
Or whatever name she's using.
Your Facebook name is Dana and Bienvenue.
Correct.
Or just Dana Bienvenue.
Yes.
But I've seen also DCX. You have like 3 Facebook pages.
I have like 6 Facebook pages.
Wow.
I'm a multifaceted person, as we discussed.
We then had a project in Sarasota. I think at that point it was On the Rocks.
That's when we got Larry and at some point Todd. And
Right.
I mean, we had 17 people in our band at one time.
And then I was in another project called Canopy Road, which you were not in.
Correct.
There was another woman at Northport that sang there, and that was more blues, like Clapton and Cream and Gary Moore and that fun stuff. But that was a fun project. We actually recorded a dozen songs in the studio, and Larry found it recently, and we listened to it. We were amazed how good it was.
Oh my gosh, I would love to hear those.
It came out so good.
Yeah, I would love to hear those.
So I'm still friendly with that keyboard player, and he's fantastic.
Is that the British guy?
No, the British guy was the drummer.
Oh, okay.
Ian.
Okay.
And he moved back to London. He's Scottish, but he moved back to London.
Oh my gosh.
Because he lived in London, but he was Scottish. And he actually corrected me several times because Scottish people don't want to be known as like English people.
No.
And I'm like, yeah, one time I introduced him as, this is my friend from England. He goes, no. He goes, I'm Scottish.
Scotland.
Yeah.
Feed it.
So I learned my lesson there.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is that those projects were the precursor, I guess, the setup for Jacked Up.
Yep.
Jacked Up then became a working band that actually had gigs. We were together for about a year or 2. I think the lineup was it more?
I think it was closer to 3, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, we were doing all the local venues. The lineup was essentially me, you, and Larry. And then we had a guitar player come, a guitar player go, a drummer come, a drummer go. But the original lineup was Timmy Angelo on drums, Timmy, who I'm still friends with. Timmy's last name was what? Blomquist. Timothy Blomquist.
I was just in Crystal River with Timmy last week.
Oh, I want to hear that. We'll save that for later.
Scalloping.
So Timmy was the drummer. He came from LA and he was a drummer that was into all that great rock and roll. I was on bass. Larry was on guitar. We had Mayhem on, so we had 2 guitars.
Yep.
And then it was you, and then we added a 6th member in Marty.
Oh, that's right.
And the funny thing is, a lot of people don't realize, because Marty became very successful in his Leadfoot Grey band. A lot of people don't realize that he started out with Jacked Up.
I know.
And there's a classic picture of you and him.
You know Marty? I'm like, we found Marty.
There was a classic picture of you and him singing live together on stage at Jacked Up. And I think Barbara Booker's like, she saw me, she goes, was Marty and Dana in the same band? Because, you're like her 2 favorites.
Oh, yeah.
She couldn't believe it. Like her mind was blown.
Yeah. No, a lot of people didn't see us back in that realm. Yeah, we had that male female singer duo thing going on for a while, and it was a lot of fun. But I mean, some of those venues that we play at and stuff, those stages are just tiny, and we would just we'd be like packed in. But then we'd get someplace like Twisted Fork with this like huge, big, wide stage, or a festival.
I remember our very first festival. I think was when Inglewood.
Was it Inglewood or was it Coquina?
Oh, maybe it was Coquina when I cut my hand.
Yes.
And then Todd Plesko played guitar with us.
Yes. So Marty wasn't with us for that.
No, he was out of town.
Gig. Okay.
He was out of town.
Yeah. Your hand was bleeding. You were
profusely.
You were leaving bloody bandage rags all over the fairgrounds while people were.
For people at home, I'll tell the story. We're getting ready to go on stage, and I decided that I want to switch out my cord, so I had to get a new cord. And it was, how they have them tightly in these containers, packages. So I took a knife. Somebody handed me a knife, like a Swiss knife, army knife. And I went to cut it, and I ended up going, shh. And I was like, blood everywhere. And it was like, oh my God.
Yep.
And meanwhile, we're supposed to be on in like 5 minutes.
I remember we were all trying to like wrap your hand up. We were all like panicking. Are you going to be able to play? Are you going to be able to play? And you're like, yeah, we can play. What's funny is that DCX also has a cut in the very same spot. So.
And you know what's funny? It's like this. When I cut my hand, all of a sudden your hand got cut out of magic.
Yep.
At the same time, because that's how close we are.
There's the scar right there.
That's how close we are.
Scar. Yep. It was like the Avengers, like Marvel.
Something out of Jesus.
It's true. So yeah, we had that performance was incredible. Remember we had the flag bearer? We had someone like running a jacked up flag around.
And the cool thing about Coquina, and I don't know if they do it there anymore, but you could see the palm trees and you could see the water
the
from
ocean.
the stage.
Yeah, you see the Gulf
gorgeous.
out there. Yeah, it was amazing.
It was gorgeous. And we did a
Huge crowd.
killer 90-minute set.
Awesome set.
And then we went down to Inglewood, the next seafood festival. And again, this is several years ago. And then Mayhem was back, as well as Marty.
And
I got some wonderful pictures still of that.
I have that framed. Yep.
Yeah, some great pictures of that. And that was another great show. And the cool thing about that show is that's when we finally realized, because the crowd was so applauding.
We had a huge crowd.
That's when we finally realized, wow, this is like, we have a good band. Like, you don't realize it until you get acceptance from that many people. And you're like, wait, if these many people like it, we must be good.
No, we had a huge crowd.
And then unfortunately, for Mayhem, I had to let him go at that point.
Yes.
Which probably would, in hindsight, that was bad timing. Should have let him enjoy the show.
Well, sometimes personnel issues can be the most difficult part of.
See, a lot of people don't realize the difficult job that K-Rock has.
I understand.
Forming a band, keeping a band together,
managing a
making
band.
these difficult decisions I have to make every night.
Management decisions on the executive level.
That's right.
I know. I understand your pain.
So,
I've been right there with you.
We were performing regularly with Jacked Up. And then we added another guitar player who sang. And the direction of the band, we wanted to start going into a more of a dance pop direction. And you
did not.
And that's why Dana, or DCX, excuse me, left the band.
What are you talking about?
Because you just didn't like the direction we were going in. You didn't like the personnel we had. And we parted ways.
Well, there was a number of things going on there at that time, too. We were getting very heavily booked. And so I believe there was actually one particular weekend where we had like 5 performances in like one weekend. We were gigging every single weekend. We were gigging multiple times a weekend, frequently, always once, sometimes twice, occasionally.
We were playing 8 to 10 times a month.
And I was starting to get some vocal damage and having some trouble with my voice, and so I was having to go through vocal therapy and using prednisone and other things, and I got a coach and all this kind of stuff, but it was just too much strain. I'm not as young as I used to be, so the gig schedule was becoming difficult for me physically with my voice, but also, as I've got kids, and I travel a lot to see kids, and they have events and games and military things that I want to attend. So it was the schedule was getting to be, so there were a lot of reasons. There was kind of the direction I wasn't thrilled about, the, as you mentioned, personnel, I wasn't thrilled about, and then just the heavy schedule was tough on me. So I needed to take like some time off and you
took at least a year off.
Yeah, it was about a year. Yeah. And one of your more recent guests, Jimmy Camastro, our friend from Cabana Dogs, was very adamant that I not be retired. He was, so I filled in for Cabana Dogs, and I don't know, I filled in for a few different, people here and there, and did some gigging around when, it's one of those things when you're a musician that's somewhat known in the circle and you're not working. Everybody's like, oh, she's available to gig in. She's available.
Sure.
She's available to fill in. So I was able to, I still was doing things, but Jimmy was pretty adamant. He's like, you're not retiring. I'm not letting you retire. So Jimmy kept, getting on me to get in another band.
And Jimmy's a great guy to play with.
He is.
As we talked about.
So much fun.
But the thing is, you also love the 90s, right?
I do.
And that's how, when Bradentucky Death Rays came together and those guys reached out to you.
Yep.
And they said, we're going to do 90s. Yeah. You were ecstatic because
it was like a dream come true.
You were like all about the 90s the day I met you.
The guy that reached out to me and asked me about being in the band, like gave me a set list, a proposed, song genre, set list. And I was just like, oh my God, I cannot even tell you, Offspring and Weezer and Blink-182 and Sublime and, Nirvana and, just like all of the, My Chemical Romance. And just all these bands that
which are songs by bands that nobody's covering right now. So when Bradentucky Death Rays came out and said, we're a 90s band, you were one of the only ones that was doing it.
Yeah.
to that degree.
We literally wanted to play only songs that no one else played. Like, we literally just, like, would go out and see other bands and, be like, "Nope, nobody does," nobody's doing any of the now a lot that now there is, like, another, like, 90s band. I think they're down south a little bit more, and some of the other popular bands around, here, do some of the songs that we do, my classic Jimmy Eat World, The Middle, and All the Small Things, and My Own Worst Enemy, and some of these things that, nobody would do any of that 90s stuff, and then we started doing it, and now
And you guys do it very, very well.
Well, thank you.
Bradentucky Death Rays is a very good band, and I myself have even filled in and played with you guys a few times.
You have indeed.
And I never forget, I would have to learn a bunch of new songs that I had never heard of before, And the Sweater Song. I'm like, oh, geez.
The Sweater Song is one of our favorites, and we need to bring that one back. But we also attempted and were, when we were having a lot of fill-in issues in that fourth position, we were always, open to doing, songs that the K-Rock was familiar with, so that we
True.
could.
You always made the K-Rock look good.
That's right. Yes.
Well, you've had a lot of bass players in your band. You had probably more than most bands go through. We had a problem with drummers too. So like there was a times with, our drummers kept rotating. We finally have 5 people that we love and adore, and everybody's great, and we're
that
happy.
you're locked in.
And obviously, your new bass player is fantastic, who I met. So I wish you guys the best. I mean, your 4 right now are just great 4.
Yeah,
great
I
forces.
feel like we finally have a solid locked in lineup where it's really a team mentality. It's tough because, as you know better than anyone, it's not you're obviously looking for a quality and competent musician. You need to find a quality, competent musician who is aligned with your vision and the type of music that you want to do. So we, might have a musician that was good, but wanted to do, classic rock. Well, we're not doing that. And then they weren't happy about the song, or like, I've never heard any of these songs. Well, you're probably not going to be able to play them that well if you don't know any of them and you've never heard them. And so somebody that is, into our style of music is also competent and a good musician, but also wants to be a part of the team, wants to be in the band, wants to, rehearse and come early and, load in and load out and, help with the marketing. And, but then, the other piece of it, and probably maybe the most important piece of it, is that, they're a decent human, they are, they have a personality that meshes with the other people in the band. I mean, and it is so difficult to find that. And we are so thrilled, so lucky, so happy that we found that in Nick. He's funny. He's a great guy. He's got a great personality. He gets our humor. We can speak freely. As you know, I sometimes have no filter. So I can't have somebody in the band who's offended easily. And, Rob and Ed, it's Rob Sabota, Ed Locke, and myself. Like, we were the 3 musketeers, kind of like you, me, and Larry, and, got very close and had a very good repertoire. So trying to bring somebody in that kind of meshes with the chemistry that we already had, we were really getting frustrated. And thank God we found Nick. So we're really enthusiastic now because we feel like we can do a lot of new music. And we got a guy that we enjoy. We enjoy rehearsing with him. We enjoy spending time with him. We enjoy performing with him. So it's nice to be around the guy. So we really have just hit the jackpot. But it was a struggle. It's been a year of hell trying to
I
find
saw you guys
this
recently at the
bass
Gator
player.
Club, and you guys were fantastic.
Thank
And the
you.
great thing about Ed, your guitar player, he also does your sound, and he does a great job of sound. He knows how to make that room work.
He
It's a tough
does.
room to do.
He can dial in all the rooms that we play.
And then
at
this Saturday,
regularly.
you're going to be at Island Time on
Yeah.
Bradenton Beach, which is a fun spot.
My favorite. Yeah. Being an island girl myself, that Anna Maria Island is like where my heart lives. So Island Time is, probably my favorite venue. Not to mention the fact that it is only a 3-hour gig, which also.
But
makes
you
it
also get a lot of dancers. Like people
a lot
will
of
come.
dancers.
Island Time is the place where they kind of move the tables out a little bit, and,
Yep.
and especially at that second set,
By the
a
end,
lot
of
of
the
people are
night.
dancing, right?
Yep.
And when I play there at 10 o'clock, we have a full house.
Yep.
And people are always screaming, one
One
more,
more song,
one more.
one
And
more
people are
song.
throwing money in the tip jar, but we can't because there's a
I
hard
know.
cutoff at
There's
10
a
o'clock.
hard cutoff. I know. Well, the nice thing about Island Time too is obviously with the open air, it's, one of those types of venues with all open, hurricane windows, and so people just literally just come in off the street.
Or they just
Or
stand
they
out
stand.
and they
I always
listen.
call it my back audience. I'm like, hey, back audience, because they're right behind me.
During season, that's one of the best places
Oh,
to
I
play.
know. I love it
especially on a
there.
Saturday.
I love it there. I love the bartenders, the management. I love the whole crew there. We always have a great show. We always have so much fun. Again, being that it's a 3-hour show, and we have enough material at this point in our repertoire. We could probably play 6 hours if we had to, but there's definitely filler songs that we play. They're good, they're fine, but we're not like ooh about them. And so at Island Time, we can just take like our absolute, top cuts, like our most favorite stuff, and come up with a killer 3-hour set.
You also have a nice following. Like you'll have a good large group of people that come to every show.
In their leopard print. Yes. We love our leopard print. We have our little
What's
theme.
the whole story behind the leopard print? Like, why is that?
Well, it's funny. So, fortunately or unfortunately, the person who started the band, we ended up having, a serious like legal and personality issue with. We won't go into detail about that. But sadly, or as is often the case, people with the most talent sometimes are not always the most mentally stable. So the guy had great ideas. Obviously, I loved the musical direction he wanted to go to. I loved the artist. He was the one that really, he wanted to do something themed. He wanted us to have, he was very good at like the branding of the band. He was the one that came up with the name Bradentucky Death Rays. I think that was in somewhat of an altered state.
And it's funny because I always thought you came up with that name because we used to make fun of Bradentucky.
Yeah, no, Bradentucky's always been kind of a running joke. And there was also,
we had a joke about Engletucky.
Bradentucky, right. And no, we were tossing all these names around, and as soon as he threw that one out, the other three of us were like, yep, that's the name. He came up with the skull and the laser lights, and then we made the skull my skull and put my hair on it. And but the leopard print thing was just, we just kind of wanted to do, I don't know, these were all like things that was like, let's do leopard print. Okay. And then we just, they were all like quick snap decisions, but they caught on. And now all the guys, and that's the other thing, like Nick is great about like some of the guys that we had, filling in or that worked with us were like, I'm not wearing leopard print. And we're like, well, all right, we're not going to force you, but.
Yeah. I don't think the K-Rock wore leopard print when he filled in.
Well,
he did have his badass motorcycle cutoff shirts.
Okay. Well, you've got the biceps, so we'll let you get away with it. Fill-ins, get a little bit of a pass on the dress code. But if you're going to be a full-time member of the band, the leopard print is somewhat.
Oh, it looks great. Your stage looks great. You got the banner back there. You got the lights.
Yeah.
The drum head is cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. You definitely look like a cool rock and roll band. There's no doubt.
Right. And that was, definitely our founder's vision. And so, I got to give the guy credit, but like I said, he was a little nuts.
So we got season coming up, and season's going to be fantastic here. It always is.
Mm-hmm.
So what can people expect? What's the future hold for the Bradentucky?
Oh my gosh, we have so much new music that we want to get into, and we're having a little bit of a tough time rehearsing right now, just because we have this summertime, people get out of town because it's so hot, so people are traveling and going on vacation and doing stuff, and we actually have quite a few gigs coming up, and so when we have a lot of gigs, it's kind of tough sometimes to get a rehearsal in between those, but we have a large list of stuff. We're bringing back a lot of the songs that we had shelved because we had fill-ins all the time, and we didn't want to make people like you learn 20 songs that they were never going to play anywhere else again. But we're bringing back all that old stuff. Our goal is to really be able to do like 2 shows in a weekend that are completely different. Like, so if somebody comes and sees us Friday night, they're not even going to hear the same song on Saturday night that they heard Friday night. And we absolutely are on track to make that a reality. Nick has great ideas. Nick came from a working band in New York, ironically enough.
Is he a Yankee fan also?
Well, not really. No, he's a Met fan. He'll give me a little bit of a hard time because he knows my strong Boston roots. But he does it in fun, and I let him get away with it a little bit. But he came from a real like kind of a disco funk kind of a band, but very very dancey, and very like Hammer Time and Funky Town, and they did a lot of it, and I'm not adverse to, and we've discussed it as a band. We're going from really being strict like 90s, where we were very adamant about that at first, to being a little bit more just eclectic. We just want to be eclectic. We want to be the band that plays.
You want to be entertaining.
We want to be entertaining.
And you want a dance floor that's going.
A packed dance floor, and we want people to hear songs that they go, "Oh my god!" Like
but
I
that's
can't believe they're
the
doing
evolution.
that song, or I can't believe that I haven't heard that. So we might be branching out into a little bit more funk and disco and that kind of thing. But it's always going to be with our flair. Anything that we do, we like to twist with our little Bradentucky style. We take, a lot of the songs that we do cover versions of them. Like we do Wild Nights, but we do the Mellencamp, version of it. We do Get Ready, but we do the Rare Earth version of it, not the Temptation. So, and like Tainted Love, we do the Scorpions version, not the, original 80s version. So we always like to put a little bit of an edge, a little spin on it. So people still hear the songs that they know and love, but we don't have to do it like the boring old way.
I think the evolution of a cover band is when you start to play things that maybe might deviate a little bit from your master plan, but yet it's entertaining enough that it's going to keep the dance floor moving,
Right.
and it's going to keep the bar owner happy,
Right.
And so now it's not about so much about what I prefer. Like,
Right.
look, if I had my way, I'd be in a Van Halen tribute band, 'cause
Right.
I just love Van Halen.
I'd be in a Panic at the Disco and My Chemical
Right.
Romance
But
band,
what we're doing is when we have to play Sweet Home Alabama, which
which I won't
yeah.
do ever.
But when somebody comes up and they're sincere and they put $100 in the tip jar, say, "Can I have Sweet Home Alabama?" We're like, "Yeah, we'll do it."
I would say no. I would say maybe if you put 2 more zeros on the end of that. No. I know. I'm a stickler about those things just because I mean, and I've had to soften that position. I came out of the gates when I had left Jacked Up, and then, with this new band, I was like, I will never sing any song that I do not want to sing. And, some of the guys, some of the people, other musicians have said, it's not really all about you. I'm like, well, I think it is, and I think it should be. But like to your point, dance floor, happy managers, happy bar owners. You want to bring business into the venue. You want people to leave entertained. But there is definitely a compromise where the band can play the kind of music that the band wants to play, and the crowd can be
Of course.
entertained.
And you also have 3 really good singers.
Yes.
So not only can they each sing lead, but they can
Right.
do great harmonies and
Right.
3-part harmonies.
Right. So we really
you
want
can sit down and,
Yeah.
and let your other guys do perhaps a classic rock song that you're not, fancy on, but yet you can still pull
Yeah,
it
no,
off as a band.
Ed, because I mean, our guitar player is absolutely astounding and just amazes me at every show. He'll pull something out that I just look at him and go, "Dang, you're good." And he does such a great rendition. He's got all the effects and the pedals and the technology to do The Wall by Pink Floyd. I remember one day in the car, you were like, "Why do you hate Pink Floyd so much?" And I was like, "I don't hate Pink Floyd." That was hilarious, that conversation. But anyway, Ed does such a great version of The Wall. And, it's so out of character for us as a band, but the way, I mean, he plays it so well. It's not a dance tune. It's not, a 90s rock song, but he does it so well. It slays. People just like lose their minds because he plays it so well.
He does. He's fantastic.
And it's fun, because everybody does the, "Hey, teacher," you get the
Sure.
crowd into it,
Oh, yeah.
chanting and everything. So, and I just get to sit back.
I think we played that at Freckled Finn when I was filling in.
Yeah.
So we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to talk about your other passion, your other job.
Oh, okay, great.
All right. So,
Yes.
DCX,
K-Rock.
you are also a charter boat captain.
I am.
Let's talk about your business. Let's talk about how you got started. Because I remember you were taking your test.
Mm.
And one day I'm like, "What are you doing tonight?" He goes, "You're like, I have to go to school." I'm like, "School? What are you talking about?" Like, "Yeah, I'm going to be a charter boat captain." I was like, "Really?" And sure enough, you went and took the exams and you passed it all. But anyway, why don't you tell the story? How did you get into the business?
Well, I've always, loved the water, always loved boating and everything, but my dad's a hunter, not a boater. And, even though I lived in New England and was on the water, I really didn't get out boating as much as I would have liked. I didn't ever, have my own boat or anything there. And then I lived in Denver, raised my family in Denver, which is pretty much landlocked and there's not much for water there at all. So there really wasn't much opportunity, but I always had a longing for, being on an island, being on the water, being on a boat, and I had sort of set an intention, when my kids were younger, that was going to be kind of the career that I was going to aspire to get into as once I got my kids raised. So we moved to Florida back in 2015, 2016-ish. And I immediately just started working at marinas, Freedom Boat Club, just anything I could do to get on a boat. Crew and mate on the Anna Maria Princess and on the LaBarge tour out of downtown Sarasota, and started to talk to captains and ask people, how do I get my captain's license? And they said, well, you get 360 days on the sea and go to sea school is the easiest way. You have to take a pretty extensive exam through the Coast Guard, and sea school prepares you. Well, actually, they administer the exam and they prepare you through their courses to know how to pass it. And so I did what did what all those people told me to do, and got out and got my own boat at one point. So I was running around and, hitting stuff and running around and getting all my kinks and learning all my mistakes. I mean, I was self-taught. I really didn't have anybody that took me under their wing and said, here, this is what you do. They don't teach you how to drive a boat in sea school. They teach you about safety and navigation and fire suppression and, the leverage and, things that you don't really use anymore because you have a Garmin. But so I just and then the nice thing was, because I was working so many different jobs, I had signed up for the online course, and then when COVID hit, I had all sorts of time that I was able to finish up my course and do all my exams and everything. They still, everybody had to go, and it was like 6 people at a time and all that crazy business. But I was able to get my credentials during the pandemic. And the great thing was, because we didn't stay closed in Florida for long, and then when we did reopen, there was limitations on restaurants and things like that. We were able to get out on the boat because, no masks, no limits on people. We were able to kind of work around, kind of, I don't know exactly how we did it or how legal it was, but anyway, I was able to get busy, right away. As soon as I had my credentials, they needed captains because people wanted to get out. They wanted to get out of the house. They wanted to get out on the water. They wanted to get on boats. Everybody was sick of being stuck inside and locked down, and it was great. And so I've stayed really busy ever since. And then got a job as a primary captain and a manager for one boat with one company. And they, after doing that for a year, they actually asked me if I would just take over the boat. That was a company doing multiple different tourism type businesses, and they asked me if I would take over the boat aspect of it. So as of earlier this year, it's now Captain Dana Boating Tours. I was able to get a new boat. I now have a Sea-Doo Switch, which is a very fun little jet boat, very little sporty dealio, 230 horsepower. And I buzz people around, and we chase dolphins and go to sandbars and tiki bars. And I like to call it the rock and roll hoochie cruise, because of course people are fascinated when they get on board and they learn that I'm in a band. A lot of times I can get my if I've got a birthday party or a bachelorette party and I have a show later on that night, I end up seeing people that I've had on the boat, out on the island, at venues that we're playing at.
Yeah,
and
you can
stuff.
cross promote.
It's fun. Yeah, it's very fun, and people love the fact that
My
I'm
sisters
in a
went
band.
on the boat with,
Yes.
and I went with them.
Yes,
So it was a great afternoon.
we did have fun.
We spent several hours going around looking at. We saw manatee, dolphin. We saw a turtle,
Oh, that's right, we did. We saw a nice turtle, and I think we saw stingrays that day too.
and then we had lunch at this phenomenal place.
Starfish, yeah.
Starfish was
In
fantastic.
Cortez.
Yeah.
Awesome place.
I mean, when the sun is out, man, and the weather's beautiful, there's no better place to be
Nope.
than on that little bay out there.
Because it's just not as humid, it's not as hot. You can get up to speed and get some breeze going if you need to. You get in the water and cool off. Yeah, we stopped at the sandbar. Yeah, because the girls got off, and yeah, we were all at the sandbar doing the sandbar
Yeah,
stuff.
and then prior to that, when we were during the jacked up days, you took us out a few times.
Band boating days.
Yeah.
That was in my Freedom Boat Club days. Yeah, we had some adventures, didn't we? Yeah, almost
Yeah,
lost the boat
I think
a couple
talking
times.
talking about learning from your mistakes. I think we were sitting having lunch, and we looked at each other like, "Did you tie the boat?" I'm like, "No." Did you tie the boat down? Like, sure enough, the boat was like floating away because we didn't tie it down properly. That's funny.
Yep. Yeah, definitely learn from experience.
But the bottom line now is that you're a seasoned, experienced captain, and you take people out almost every day.
Yeah.
And people find you how? How do they sign up for you?
So I have a website, amiboatingtours.com. I'm also on Facebook, Captain Dana. I'm getting more and more and more. I get my business through word of mouth, personal referrals, repeat customers. I've had a number of really beneficial relationships with boat owners who have helped me acquire a lot of business and a book of business. I do a lot of captaining for Why Not Rent a Boat. Mike and Carrie Why Not are amazing, great people, and they have larger boats, so big pontoons where you can get 10, 12, 15, people on a boat. My boat's smaller. I'm usually 6 max.
So if you have a large group, you can
I
accommodate
can
them,
still
and you can
accommodate
get
them.
them a
Yeah.
bigger boat
I work
through
with
friendships.
I work with a guy down in Siesta Key who's got a large pontoon. So I've got access to larger boats to accommodate bigger groups. So captaining for Rob, captaining for Why Not, captaining for other boat owners has allowed me to have access to a vessel. I also have access to executive decision, the Sea Fox 33 foot center console, so I can, accommodate fishing groups and that kind of thing
So
with that boat.
what's a typical day then? For like a party of 8 comes and they want to be on the boat and they want to spend several hours with you on the water. What's a typical day for them? Like, what time do they get there? What do you guys do? Where do you go? Like, how does it all work?
Well, being that I am a rock and roll lifestyle enthusiast, I don't enjoy early mornings. So I like to not start our tours until 10, maybe 11. Um, and and honestly, there's no real reason to be out on the water early in the morning because there's nothing really going on. A lot of times people want to stop at, there's a number of great waterfront restaurants and facilities, all throughout Cortez, Bradenton, and Anna Maria Island, Palmasola, the whole area. There's lots of sandbars, lots of bars and restaurants, and lots of great little gem, sightseeing places. So I like to my ultimate favorite sort of adventure day is maybe start out, you know, at 10 or so, get out to a sandbar, do some swimming, get in the water. I have a float mat and noodles. I have scoops, so like kids can and adults can find starfish or little clams and scallops and different things and scoop those up and look at the little creatures that live in our waters. Um, use the noodles, use the snorkels, and get out and play around. And then most of the bars and restaurants open about 11. So after a couple hours of on the water stuff, it's nice to sometimes stop, take a rest break, get into some AC, get some bite to eat, get a cocktail, and then go around and I like I said, like kind of chase dolphins and manatees around, go look for the wildlife, go show people there's osprey, there's bald eagles, there's stingrays and turtles and manatees, dolphins. So we try to go out and find some of that cool wildlife, show people sharks. There's everything that lives in the water is out
2 of
there.
my favorite things to do, in addition to all that, is to have adult beverages and to get a wicked suntan.
Or yes, and the third favorite thing that you didn't mention, but I know is listen to cool music. So I always have it's always
Does the
jams.
new boat have a nice stereo on it?
Yes, it does. Yeah, so we're always jamming, it's like so I always ask people, I always make sure we set the tone, with the proper, playlist or Pandora station so everybody's like getting their groove on. I mean, music, really enhances the whole experience,
Without a
obviously.
doubt. I think the best thing that somebody can do that's visiting here is take one of your charters
Yeah, well,
because
I
you can
try
really
to
see a lot.
exactly. So I try to show people like typically, especially on a a multi-hour tour like you're talking. I try to take people up to the north end of the island so they can get a whole perspective. Like when you're driving on the island, you just can't understand like
Right, yeah.
the whole unless you get
And you can see
an
some of these
area.
beautiful homes too.
Right, right. So you get up to like, Passage Key and Egmont and Bean Point, you can see St. Pete, you can see the Tropicana Field where the Red Sox play when they come here. They and I like to take them up to because it's a 7 mile long island, but it's pretty easy to get the whole scope of it by water, by boat. So I take them, from the northern point of the island and then like to take them all the way down to Longboat Pass, which is where Jewfish Sandbar is, which is where we've had some of our fun band boating day experiences. And again, there's multiple restaurant, you've got just all sorts of history and old Florida type, you got like Annie's, which is like a fuel and beer stop, totally old Florida, bait shop with, birds and boats and stuff. And just show people like everything along the way. Like to stop at the bridge tender. I like to stop at Florida's. I like to stop in Cortez, take them to Starfish or
These are typically
Swordfish.
4-hour tours, so you got
Yeah.
10 to 2.
Yeah. That's a
So
lot
you
of
can get a
time.
lot done in those 4 hours.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
even stop
Cover
for
a
lunch
lot
for
of
an hour.
grab. Yep. Stop, have some cocktails um, and then end up down at the sandbar at Longboat. There's this shore down there, but again, take them out into the Gulf. I like to show people because the water down there is usually really gorgeous. It's shallow It's crystal blue clear. It's beautiful. So,
And what do you do differently if it's a sunset tour? Like where would the route be?
with sunset tours, usually just a couple hours. So a lot of times it's just sometimes people on sunsets want to take a quick dip, and I'll stop at the sandbar and let them get in. But most of the time on sunsets, we'll basically just tool around and look for dolphins. And I'm pretty good at finding them. So usually that eats up 20, 30 minutes if we find a nice pod and they're playful and active, and we really want to watch them interact. And a lot of times, people want to get pictures and videos, but we're having drinks, we're playing music, we're looking for wildlife, and then we, again, kind of make that route from. I usually launch out of Holmes Beach, and then we kind of make the route down to Longboat and go out into the Gulf and spend, it's a good 30 minutes by the time you get out there. 'Cause, the sky is just beautiful as the sun is setting, and then you get the sunset itself takes 5-10 minutes. So I either take them down to Longboat for the sunset, or I take them up and go out to the Gulf, out the pass where we go by Rod and Reel and City Pier, Indiana Maria, and go out, watch the sunset out there. But also, again, tons of wildlife out there because all those
So
passes are full of
you've
stuff.
seen a lot of sunsets, right? So you're used to it.
Oh yeah,
But to me, I don't see that many because I don't really get out there. But when I do, it's such a spiritual thing to me, man.
it
It's just
is
really. I mean, I feel like
really gorgeous.
I potentially am at the closest I ever will be to God.
Yeah,
You know,
no, it's incredible.
and being in an environment where it's just nothing but beauty.
Well, and just watching it set, like, over the actual water is just kind of a different experience, and if you see it, over a cityscape and stuff, it's all beautiful. But, we usually have, like I said, a lot of times I frequently have a little gift for my guests on the boat, which includes some kind of a sparkling beverage.
Ooh,
So a lot of times, especially if it's, just a couple or two couples, we have a nice toast.
little
They have
champagne,
a little bubbly as the sun is setting, and of course,
very
I
nice,
adjust the music
very
accordingly.
classy.
I'm very cognizant of the ambiance, and the music is a big part of that. So I usually make it a little bit more, it's either like reggae or it's something a little like light 70s, old 70s rock or whatever, not rock, but 70s, pop, Paul Rundgren style, things like that. So, I kind of set a scene for people, and they just, a lot of people say that going out on the boat was the highlight of their whole trip, depending on what we see and what we do. And, I try to make it a memorable experience for people. And
Well, I've never seen you happier. I mean, you love this. You're doing such a good job, and you love it.
thank you.
You
Thank
know,
you. No, I am. And it's, of course, it's difficult, it's stressful owning your own business and being your own boss, but
but think about
obviously
this,
hugely
man. You
rewarding.
got bit by the salt bug, and you're living your dream. I
Yeah.
mean, because besides being a charter boat captain and a good one, and it being in a killer rock and roll band, right? So you have the two jobs. You also were trained as a lawyer. I mean, you went to law school, you worked at a
Yeah.
law practice,
Yeah.
and you were like 9 to 5, wearing suits and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then now you're doing the complete opposite.
Yeah. No, I realized, as you grow and learn who you are as a person and what makes you happy, you realize I realized pretty early on that I hated cold weather, and I hated being in an office. I hated, being under fluorescent lights. I hate punching a clock. I don't want to be accountable for, my time. As you know, I'm a little bit of a rebel. So I don't like to be told when I have to be somewhere and what I have to do. And of course, running charters, it's like obviously I have a schedule, but it's like it's my schedule.
Sure.
I get to pick it, and I'm
Yeah.
I'm accountable to myself. I don't like other people. I don't like people being the boss of me. I think we had a hashtag to that effect. Hashtag K Rock is not the boss of DCX 2020, which, gets updated every year. But yeah, you kind of were the boss of me for a little while. You kind of still are a little bit in some ways, but I let you. But I did not enjoy having a boss. I did not enjoy being monitored, micromanaged. I just corporate corporate is not my jam. So I hated the cold weather. I hated being indoors, So yeah, I mean even this past, we had some weather come in, and after 2 or 3 days of clouds and no sun and stuff, I start to get a little antsy and get a little crabby. I don't like it.
Well, the bottom line is that you're having a blast, right?
Yeah, I am.
And your kids are all grown up now. They're all very successful.
Yeah.
Your two
Kids are
boys
doing
are in
great.
the service.
Yep.
One of them's a Marine, and the other one's in the Navy. Correct?
Yes. Yep. Daniel is protecting our nation from a computer, which I fully enjoy. My Marine is NSA cybersecurity, and
Interesting.
my sailor is he's assigned to the USS Utah, which is a nuclear submarine that's
Wow.
actually still under construction. So he's in Groton, and he's learning his job as the boat is being constructed. They go do inspections, and they learn about every system from the ground up. So as it's being built, they're literally observing like how these things are built, because once you're on the sub, you have to be able to fix everything. But it's a brand new sub, state-of-the-art technology. He's going to be the first class of sailor to be skilled and educated and use some of this technology. So he's really on the cutting edge of nuke sub technology, which is awesome for him, but it's also awesome for me because he's not actually underwater and won't be for a while because the sub's not built yet, and it won't be for another year or so. So he's still on land, and so is his brother, and they're on the East Coast. So I get to go right on my way up to Fenway Park. I get to hit, Baltimore for my Marine, and Connecticut for my sailor, and then I go up to
catch an Orioles game and then a Red Sox game.
I do. Yep. That's exactly right. I go to because I love Camden Yards. It's probably my second.
Oh yeah.
And then my other kids live out in Denver, so I go to Coors
Have you ever been to
Field.
Wrigley, Cubs Field, Wrigley?
I have not.
Yeah, that's a good stadium.
I know.
I used to live in Chicago.
That's the one I need to go to. I know we've talked about this because I was in Chicago when Thomas graduated from boot camp from the Navy, but we didn't have any time to go to a ball game because he had strict orders. He had to be back at Great Lakes back on base, like specific time. And that traffic in Chicago is a little crazy, so we couldn't risk it going to a ball game.
I have a huge respect for the military, our men and women who are fighting for us and protecting us, as well as the people that are retired. But my best friend is actually a commander in the Navy. He actually commands a floating hospital.
Our doctor, our band doctor, Dr. Steve Arliss.
Yeah.
Yes.
Commander Arliss.
Arliss.
He's the top dog, and he's
very proud.
He's got a boat that's being
and
deployed soon.
Speaking of concerts, had a concert experience with the doctor.
Well, that leads us into a great segment.
Commander.
That takes us into the next segment.
Who did we see with Steve? We took him to...
We saw the Black Crows.
Great show.
With Honey with the opening act.
Yeah, they were pretty
Wild
good.
Honey or something.
Yeah, I think that's right. But yeah, that was a fun night. We had a whole group of us that went out.
Well, living in the Tampa Bay area, we have the access to see a lot of good shows.
Awesome shows.
I mean, between, Tampa Bay, St. Pete, and then, Fort Lauderdale too, Hollywood, right?
Oh, yeah.
I've seen a lot of good shows down there. You and I have seen a bunch of good shows together.
Yes.
I just recently saw the Sammy Hagar tribute to Van Halen with a bunch of guys.
And you and I had seen Sammy and
The Circle.
Bad to the Bone. What's his name?
George Thorogood. Yeah.
We went over to Hollywood for that show.
Right.
We were at the Hard Rock.
Right, which is a great venue.
Yeah.
Because it's small.
Mm-hmm.
The Hollywood in Tampa is really small. It's almost like they just took a big ballroom and made it into a concert hall. But the one in Hollywood is like a professional, nice, proper
theater.
Mm-hmm.
That was a great show.
Great show.
Yeah.
Great show. And,
so where have we been? We've seen shows at Amalie, of course, TSO.
TSO
is always at Amalie.
Oh my God, I loved it. You turned me on to that.
I know.
So we've gone 2 years now.
Yeah.
So I remember one time you went. I didn't go with you that time, and
I've been going to TSO since.
And you came
90s.
Back and you were telling me how great it was, and I'm like, who the hell's TSO?
Yeah.
And Trans-Siberian Orchestra, I didn't know they were rock and roll. I just thought they were like an orchestra.
Killer.
So then you convinced me to go. So you and I go. It was my first time.
Mind was blown.
Oh, dude, it was fantastic. I was hooked.
We had great seats too.
These guys
really
were phenomenal.
Good seats.
And then we went back the next year.
And the show, they always manage to outdo themselves. It's incredible how they do it. I mean, I've been seeing them since my sister turned me on to them in Las Vegas. I started seeing the shows in Vegas back in the 90s or 2000s, early 2000s, I guess. And so I've been going for like 20 years, almost every year. Seen them in Denver, Las Vegas. Now.
But there's something special about Tampa.
They're
incredible. Because don't they, like some of them live in the Tampa area?
They're mostly based out of Florida. Yep. And so they love it here because most of the musicians that perform when they perform here are local musicians, and they have their families in the crowd. And so it's a really special show for those guys. And
it's funny because do you remember the first Die Hard movie when all those German guys had the long hair?
Oh yeah.
I always think of Die Hard.
Oh my God, totally.
When I go see Siberian Orchestra.
I know. Everybody has long hair. Everybody. I think
they're wearing tuxedos.
You're not allowed to have short hair and be in TSO.
They're like wearing tuxedos or fancy clothes, but then
you're just waiting for them to pull out an AR.
So they look very hair metal 90s.
They do.
But, they're playing classical music on an electric guitar or like a violin.
It's amazing. They do everything. They do a great job. So yeah, I've been obviously to tons of concerts in Amalie.
Remember Bryan Adams? How good that was.
That was Amalie also.
I was shocked how good it was.
And
like I didn't expect Bryan Adams to be so good. It was
and Joan Jett.
Joan Jett opened up.
Yep. And they were both fantastic. Although I agree. I was like, all right, Bryan Adams, yeah, I've been listening to his music now since I was a teenager. Like what can he possibly do? And I was like, damn, just like the Eagles. You took me to the Eagles at
were so
was that
good.
also at Emily?
Yeah. Eagles were so freaking good.
And I was like, you know me, classic rock. And then it was Vince
No, but
Gill,
every
who's country, and I was like, and I was
every
like,
song
and
was
they had
like-
an orchestra.
That's right.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
what they did was they
so
toured
good.
the Hotel California album,
Yeah.
played it from start to finish,
Yep.
and then they played their greatest hits after that.
And I couldn't believe, I mean, I knew every single one of those songs on that album. I was like, I don't listen to classic rock. I don't like classic rock. And then every single song, I was like, oh my God, I love this song. You know, I loved it so much that Patty and I, my best friend, when we, after that concert, it was, it had been they did that whole documentary on the Eagles, and we watched that like whole thing.
It was like a two-parter.
Yeah. So me and Patty and Doug watched like the whole thing because I was so jazzed about the Eagles after that.
Yeah.
That was a great, great show.
Now, another great show we saw, and you invited me last minute, was Def Leppard: A Journey, which again, okay, so
I thought you were going to say Fall Out Boy.
well, no, we'll talk about that next. But here's the thing: being a musician, right, and being in a local cover band and doing our own sound, I understand how difficult it could be to do proper sound, and I know how rewarding it is when it sounds good.
The mix,
and we're just a small little band that plays a bar. So now you walk into a stadium, right? And you're like,
that was Orlando.
It was Orlando's Citrus Bowl.
Well, yeah, a football stadium. That's right.
They only use it for bowl games.
Right.
So I was like, how is this going to sound, right? And we sat down, and I was amazed how good it sounded.
Well, not only that, but we also snuck seats, right? Remember, we got way lowered. Down. Yeah. So we were not so far down that we were under the sound, but we weren't so far up. So we were like those big, huge tower speakers were, oh my God, the sound was phenomenal.
So Journey comes out and plays every song like the record. So I'm saying to myself, okay, Def Leppard's headlining. How the hell can they
possibly 70 some odd years old
beat that? How could they beat that?
God, it sounded
And what's
good.
the first thing you said to me when they started singing?
I was like, are they really singing?
Yeah.
Or are they lip syncing?
They were so good. We thought they were singing the tracks.
Are they really singing? There's this.
So all there's 5 guys. 4 of them are like really singing. Like,
yeah, no, they all have good. Yeah, no, they can all sing.
And
same with Journey. I mean, they've got a singing drummer, and you know, I mean,
Neil Schoen's the only one that probably doesn't sing there,
right? But those Def Leppard guys, man, they all have great voices, and they're so well.
And we kind of missed Cheap Trick, but I've seen them so many times.
Yeah, no, we caught like 2 or 3 of their songs, and actually, Surrender is probably my favorite Cheap Trick song.
In my lifetime, I've seen Cheap Trick a lot because they always were.
I saw a couple.
Like they opened up for Heart, they opened up for Aerosmith. Like every time I would go to a show, it was always Cheap Trick. So they have a great show. In fact, I got up close and personal with those guys once at a Super Bowl. A friend of mine was an executive with the NFL. So the night before the game, this is in Tampa when it was, I think, Ravens and Giants a long time ago. He goes, K-Rock, we're going to this thing. So he gives me a ticket. They're slicing prime rib, giving us shrimp cocktail, drinking premium drinks. And then we go up to the stage, and we're literally right in front of them because it was a small private party for the NFL elite and the advertisers.
Okay.
And I only got in because I knew this guy.
Yeah.
So I'm literally looking at the set list on the I can read the set
read
list
it from
And I'm like calling out the songs because I was drunk, and they were just playing them. You know.
They were like, "Oh, that's the guy that reads the set list." Okay.
But it was incredible how good they were, and I was like, "Wow, man!" You know.
No, I think we walked in. They were still doing their set, and I think I saw like 2 or 3 of their songs, but the songs that they did when we got there were the ones that I really liked. So I was happy, you know, because of course they do "I Want You to Want Me," you know, that's their wrap up song. But they did "Surrender," which is my favorite. So yeah, we saw them. But no, the other last minute one I took you to was Fall Out Boy at the Mid, which I love. I've seen Offspring, Panic
Fall
at
Out
the
Boy
Disco,
was good.
Fall
I
Out
didn't
Boy.
know anybody. I didn't know any songs except that one. But you were loving it. You were dancing. You were having a great time.
But they put on a great show.
Yeah, it was
and
a good
they
show.
are all good singers.
You know what I liked about that show is that there was such an energy in the audience of people singing along to every lyric.
Oh yeah.
And I said to myself, "Wow, I didn't know that they were so popular."
They have been around for a long time. They're like, I mean, that's the thing. I just went to All Time Low with my kids at Red Rocks. And they've been around for 20 years.
Tell me about Red Rocks. What's that like?
Oh my gosh. So that's how I really got into the 90s alternative was when I moved to Denver and I met this woman named Janet Morris, and she had this little red convertible, and she was totally into concerts and live music. And she turned me on to between her and my triplets dad, my ex-husband, I just totally got into the 90s. He was like big into Coldplay and My Chemical Romance and Panic at the Disco, and I got into like System of the Down and Limp Bizkit, who I'm going to see tonight, in fact. And but my kids really got me into Paramore and Evanescence um, and like I said, Panic at the Disco and Sleeping with Sirens and Black Veil Brides and all like all these like crazy sort of alternative rock bands. But Denver radio really plays a lot more of that stuff.
Because there's a younger personnel there. I mean, like think about it.
Right.
Tampa Bay is all old folks.
Foo Fighters and 303 and are just like a lot more better than Ezra, just a lot more alternative rock. 93.3 KTCL is like
it was
my
for
favorite.
a younger demographic.
Right. And they have a great alternative rock radio base. And so therefore all those concerts come, to Fiddler's Green and the Fillmore and the Bluebird and then of course Red Rocks. So Janet took me up to Red Rocks and I was just hooked. I mean, I ended up being up at Red Rocks like every chance I got. I've seen
how were the acoustics?
Oh, just incredible. I mean, and it's not like crazy loud, but it just sounds so good and it just bounces off all those hills and mountains around you. I mean, you're walking up to the concert and there's a herd of deer just sitting there, grazing like, 10,
so
15.
Red Rocks is like down, like, so you have to go up and then like,
no,
it's built in like a bowl.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. Like you go up to the top and then you walk down into the amphitheater down there, but then you see the entire Denver skyline. I mean, you can see for, probably close to 100 miles. You can see because it's nice and clear out there, being that high altitude. It's usually really clear at night. The stars, the sky is just black, stars everywhere. It's like everything about Red Rocks is just phenomenal. So I started with Janet. I saw, Godsmack and Coldplay. I've seen Depeche Mode, Panic, and then we saw All Time Low. My kids and I went up there, and I mean, it was like a 4-hour deal. I mean, we had Beauty School Dropouts opened, and then it was Bad Sons, which I mean, and it's funny because you'll know songs from Bad Sons, but and I knew more than I thought I did. Sometimes I don't know who sings these songs that I know. And then All Time Low, it was just hit after hit after. I mean, they've been out for like 20 years, So the show was just awesome, and it's so much fun, going up to going to concerts with my kids, especially. It's just so much fun to experience that. But
very cool.
Red Rocks is by far
Red Rocks rocks.
Yeah. Yes.
So Dana, we're out of time.
Okay. Well, sorry.
So,
amazingly,
can I have you back? Can I have you back for a part 2 one day?
Of course, absolutely. Yeah. We'll, I can be a standing guest.
We have a lot more to talk about.
We always do.
But here's the deal. So how can they find you for Death Rays? Where's the schedule? Like, where do they go to see?
Okay, that's a good question. So I love to direct people to a fabulous website that we have in this area called gotonight.com. Go Tonight is fantastic because it's listed by venue, by artist, or just by date. So if you're like, where do we want to go tonight? You can see everybody that's playing everywhere.
And what's that website address?
Gotonight.com. And so the Bradentucky Death Rays are on gotonight.com, and all of the venues that we play at are also listed on gotonight.com. So it's a great place to go for live local music just in general. We also have a Facebook page, which is entitled, coincidentally enough, the Bradentucky Death Rays. I've got vocals by DCX on my Facebook as well. So I've got my own little DCX page. And we can also be found on YouTube. There's videos of the band on YouTube, Bradentucky Death Rays. We have a little channel. We don't put a ton of content on there because we're always busy doing stuff and we don't get video as much as we'd like to. But if there is video, it's usually on there. And and then you can also just ask K-Rock because he's the man on the pulse of the music scene in Sarasota.
I'm trying to be. I'm trying to be the guy. Yeah,
you are. Yeah, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Go Tonight. Those are basically.
I highly recommend that somebody who has not seen you guys yet definitely go see you. And at the Gator Club, where it's very, very exciting, there's a lot of dancing there.
Yeah,
that's a good venue for you too.
Yep. And we got a lot of fun venues, but we always end up having people come to our shows that say that they just happened to walk in
and they become fans.
And they were like, wow, so it's awesome for us to pick up fans, at every show. And we love that.
And then if somebody wants to charter your boat or be on your boat,
so again, I'm on Facebook as Captain Dana. And then I've got an actual website, amiboatingtours.com. And so just remember Captain Dana. And if you look me up anywhere on Facebook, you'll be able to find all those other pages. They're all linked together. And you can always send me a message, and I will be happy to take you out on a boat ride and then invite you to a show later on that evening.
Unbelievable. A full day with DCX on the water and in the concert hall. Well, thanks for coming on.
You're welcome.
And we'll
Always
see
a
you.
pleasure.
Yeah, we'll see you at the next show.
All right. Sounds great.